Alright, what's up my friends? Welcome to the Archetype breakdown for Bloomburrow. I'm very excited, you should be too. This set looks freaking awesome. I've already played it on 10 new brews and early access to constructed, but of course the Bronze to Mythic run starts tomorrow. That's right, tomorrow the claws come out. Tuesday night, I'll be doing 2 drafts to kick off the premiere and doing more of this week, of course, as well. So I'm excited for that, you should be too. But first, we got to take a look at the archetypes, kind of break down the themes of the set so we can understand what's happening here and what our drafts are going to look like. So this is going to be an archetype breakdown, going over all 10 color pairs, their creature type that's associated with them, and their theme, and talk about what their decks want to be doing. Also talk importantly about how if it's a tight theme or a loose theme. So some themes are really, really tight. You want every single, card in your deck to be an artifact for your affinity deck. And some themes are loose, blue, black, draw, control, where you can kind of just play good cards and you don't need to be that locked to your theme. We're going to go over that. We're going to go over the colored cards. We're doing this through the lens of a signpost uncommons. Every set has one signpost uncommon for each 2-color pair. Kind of tells you what each color is all about. Let's just get started with blue. The birds. Plume, Creed, Mentor. Blue-white, the creature type is bird. And we have kind of a loose theme here. Of obviously, the birds all have flying, and there are things to care about birds. There's kind of this loose theme of sort of like creatures that, with flying helping non-flyers. So Plume Mentor is a 3-mana 2/3 flyer, which is fine. Whenever it or another flyer ETBs, but a plus encounter on a creature you control without flying. So kind of weird. You can see how right off the bat this is not a very strong theme because in theory, if all of our cards had flying, this card wouldn't do anything. That wouldn't be good. So, kind of a looser theme. Wants you to play non-flyers with your flyers. Kind of an odd theme overall, honestly, because you're balancing the act. But obviously, this card is totally fine. This thing, adds a few counters here or there. It's a pretty good flyer. Not too shabby, but definitely one of the looser themes. Every color pair also has a hybrid common. We saw in Modern Horizons there was a gold common that was insane. This is a regular power level set, obviously, so the hybrid cards are going to be just reasonable. Seed Pod Squire is the Azorius bird hybrid common, 3-mana for a 3/3 flyer. Whenever it attacks, creature you control without flying gets +1/+1 to end a turn. So, same idea, right? It's a flyer, decently well statted, pumps your non-flyers. Amusingly, it almost plays better in red-white because of the Valiant theme. More on that later. But obviously a totally reasonable card. And these hybrid cards will see play in other color combinations as well. You can play this in your blue-red deck or your green-white deck. Because of that, they're a little more flexible. But yeah, obviously a totally reasonable card. Nothing too crazy here. Night Fisher is a big uncommon. 5-mana for a 4/5 flyer. And for a non-token bird, ETBs make a bird fish token. So there obviously are some typal things happening here too. But it's kind of a loose theme, honestly. So you got Night Fisher. Banishing Light Skill removal spell. This is because it's a looser theme. You're going to want more traditional elements like removal spells and bounce spells and stuff like that. Dazzling Denial is also the typal counter spell. 2 mana for a quench. If you have a bird, it's counters pay 4. So obviously, if you have birds in your deck, this card's quite good. 2 mana counters pay 4 is pretty awesome. But how many birds do you have, and so on and so forth. And you don't want that many of these anyway. But kind of plays well into sort of like the tempo flyer angle. And the last bird we're going to look at, 2 birds left, is Plume Creed Escort. 2 mana flash flyer, ETB, give a thing hexproof. It's a bird. Again, just kind of a generically good flyer. It does play well with the counterspell, which is kind of cool. And then Strike Force, 2 mana for a 1/3 flying, double strike vigilance. Again, sort of like just kind of generically good flyers. So Azorius, kind of a looser theme. You can kind of just play your good cards, kind of play your traditional sort of blue-white flyers deck. Not going to need to have, 17 birds for your deck will function. So, a little more looser theme. That's blue-white. Up next is blue-black with a returning mechanic, Threshold, for all my boomers out there.
Yeah.
Threshold just turns on if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard. And folks, if you haven't played Threshold before, 7 is a lot. Yes, cards go to your graveyard normally in the game Magic, but don't expect to get Threshold by accident. If you want to have Threshold reliably, you're going to need to enable it, which this color combination obviously does. So, Tie Caller here is a 3/3 menace for 3. Threshold, bounce a non-land permanent. It's a pretty good card. The body is obviously fine. I feel like you want a little more of a payoff for actually achieving Threshold, but obviously a totally reasonable card. Then we have Mind Drill Assailant as the hybrid common. 4 mana for a 2/5. It's a 5/5 if you have Threshold. And then you spend 3 mana to surveil 1. So obviously this can enable Threshold as the game goes on. I think this card's pretty good, honestly. A 2/5 body blocks really, really well. It scales itself well into the late game because it has a good late game ability as far as getting bigger, as well as surveilling. So I like this card. I think it's a good defensive card. Not really a card we would want to play out of the non-threshold decks, you know, but I think a very good card for this archetype. Mind Whisker, the metaphor a 3/2. Upkeep Surveil. So there you go. Put cards in the graveyard. This is an enabler and a payoff. At threshold, all your opponent's creatures get -1/-0. Don't underestimate that ability. It's really, really powerful. But obviously a somewhat fragile body, but very good card here. Just kind of good for getting threshold, and then can you go up there. Shoreline Looter, same idea. 2 mana for a 1/1 unblockable. Whenever you hit your opponent, loot. If you have threshold, you just keep the card. That's pretty insane. You know, a 1/1 unblockable looter for 1 is pretty good regardless. But once this thing turns on and starts drawing cards, it's awesome. And again, payoff and enabler all in one. Thought Shucker, careful on that one. Careful. Is a 2 mana 1/3. Has threshold, pay 2 mana, put a counter on it, draw a card, but you can only do it once. This is the kind of archetype, staple card where if you are this archetype and you're getting threshold reliably on turn 5 or 6, this card's great, honestly. But if you're not, this card's absolutely terrible. So, the kind of card you want to get late, if you're seeing this card late, your deck is open. Dagger Fang Duo is your classic self-mill enabler. The mana for a 3/2 Death Touch, EDB mill 2. Just gets you threshold, makes a lot of sense. Also, a Squirrel plays well with their 4 stuff, more on that later. And Persistent Marshstalker, kind of a sweet card, a little more aggressive than a lot of the other cards in this archetype. It seems more like a blue-black kind of control threshold archetype, but 2 mana for a 3/1, good body. It's bigger for all your rats, which is also pretty good. Then threshold, they can keep coming back for more every time if your other rats attack. That's really, really powerful. So they give this guy more as an early blocker in these decks to trade off and then come back later, but really powerful card. So blue-black, kind of your more traditional kind of control, want to fill the graveyard and stuff, but for the most part, you're just playing cards that are good, kind of killing things. You know, kill spells and draw spells both go to the graveyard also. So going to be a more controlling archetype and looks pretty sweet. Up next is Rakdos, which is by far the most aggressive archetype. Rakdos cares about your opponent losing life to turn on all the abilities. Think Bloodthirst from whatever set Bloodthirst was in. And these cards all look pretty impressive. You know, Fireglass Mentor here is a Rakdos 2-drop. Second main, if it lost life this turn, exile a top 2, and you can play one of them. That's insane, right? Just draw a card every turn. But the big problem with these cards is if you are behind or can't damage your opponent, things fall apart really fast, and all your cards all of a sudden do nothing. Cinder and Cutthroat, pretty similar. The metaphor a 3/2. It's a 4/3 if it ETBs with your opponent having lost life this turn. It can also gain Menace, but again, on the back foot. This wasn't that bad because like a 3/2 for 3 isn't the worst thing that's ever happened to you. But the fail states here are a very real thing. This is a extremely all-in color pair. This is, about as tight as they come. You really want to have all your cards doing the exact same thing so your cards will actually function. A Gateblade Assassin is a good enabler for that. 2 mana for a 1/3. Whenever it attacks, they lose 1, you gain 1. Even if they block with the 2/2, they still lose life. This turns on all your abilities. And if you're desperate just for a trigger, just act with it. Throw it away so you get triggers. Thoughtstalker Warlock is another payoff. This is a 2/2 for 3. EDB, they discard. If you deal damage to them, you freaking Thoughtseize them. Card's insane. It has a good floor at least, where card's fine too. But yeah. Ravine Raiders, another kind of enabler card. I'm for Roman Menace. Can pump. This card looks pretty bad on average, but in the context of this deck where you have to damage your opponent every turn, especially in the early turns, seems pretty important actually. Scales of Shale also seems really, really important. If you are attacking non-stop, you're putting your opponent in spots where they have to block and make unfavorable blocks. This thing has affinity for lizards, so will cost 1 mana almost all the time. And +2/+0, lifelink, indestructible for 1 mana is awesome, especially if you're always attacking. This feels like a linchpin card in the archetype, and really, really important, but you will get it late because no one else wants this card. I see Flame Cash Gecko here, a real good look at like how this deck can fall apart. 2 mana for a 2/2. If you've dealt damage to them, you get 2 mana back, like a Burning Tree Emissary style. But if you haven't, this is just a bear. And it has a somewhat relevant ability, but not super great. And I'm a little worried with this archetype. It seems like if your deck is really, really good, you have a bunch of good rares and removal spells, you're going to steamroll people. But I worry the games you're not steamrolling, they're actually going to fall apart. So we will see what happens, but this archetype scares me a little bit, kind of a tread lightly kind of thing. Next up is Raccoons, another kind of loose archetype. The Raccoon mechanic is Expend. You can see here Expend 4. Put a counter on this. Expend means to spend your 4th mana in the turn on spells. This is a 2/2 mana dork for 2 that grows. This card's obviously freaking awesome. It also plays perfectly into the mechanic because if you want to spend 4 mana, doing so on turn 3 is a pretty good place to be, right? So this card's absolutely awesome. and links into what you're doing very, very well. Junkblade Bruiser is the hybrid common, 5 mana for a 4/5 trample. Or if you expend 4, it gets bigger. That's pretty good too. So this is going to be kind of like your typical red-green kind of stompy big creature deck. You're going to want to have a lot of 4s and 5s, ways to cast them early, mana dorks and stuff. Take out a trash, just removal spell, kills a thing. If you control a raccoon, you can loot. Not very related to expending, but just obviously good. Brazen Collector is great here also. 2/1 first strike for 2. Makes a mana when it attacks. Same idea. Cast that 4-drop on turn 3. Cast things faster. 4 drops all day is the name of the game for raccoons. Rebel Guard Veteran is a 3 mana 3/4. Whenever you expend 4, you pump the whole team and gain vigilance. Awesome. Obviously great. Bark Knuckle Boxer, 2 mana for a 3/2. Expend 4, indestructible. So you get the idea here. You're going to want to be careful of not playing too many 4s and 5s. But this deck's mostly going to want to go 2-drop, 3-drop, and then 4s for the rest of the game. You could also go double 2-drop, that counts as well, or 2-drop, 3-drops, double spelling, but spend your mana and beat down. Rush Shield Rampager, looks like I have a filler card, right? 4 mana for a 4/4, Offspring 2, Offspring gets token. So it's either a 6 mana for a 4/4 and a 1/1, or 4 mana for a 4/4. Normally that's filler, but I think this card will actually be a lot better in the Raccoon Red-Green decks, because it's just a way to spend 4 mana at a reasonable rate, which is pretty cool too. So keep an eye for that as well. Next up are bunnies, multiplying like crazy. Bunnies. We love those bunnies. Burrow Guard Mentor, 2 mana for a star trample. Power and toughness equals the number of creatures you control. Counts itself, obviously. And the theme here is pretty obvious. Go wide. Make a bunch of rabbits everywhere. Tokens. They don't need to be rabbits, obviously. You can't just go wide. It's kind of cool because, like, there are typal things happening in this set, but they're not all in typal. It's not like every card is a rabbit or your deck will function. So go wide, make tokens. Get aggressive. Card seems very, very good. And then the hybrid common fits in this as well. 5 mana for a 3/2, also make 2/1s. Go wide, get paid off is the theme here, and there's a lot of things that pay into it. So, pretty tight theme. All these cards are all pretty good by themselves. Hop to it, banger, right? 3 tokens for 3. Pump them all up, do your things. Obviously, exactly what this deck wants to be doing. Harvest Strike Host, another one that's also great. 3 mana for a 3/3. Whenever this or another rabbit ETBs, pump a creature, and note that it targets it for Valiant, which is cool. And then if you have had 2 things enter his turn, you get to draw a card, which is awesome. So, Harvest Strike Host into hop to it, pump some things, draw some cards, pretty awesome. Warren Elder is a pretty surprisingly powerful 2-drop. This sort of like 2-drop mana sink is often like a whatever filler kind of card. I think this card's actually insane in this deck. Played against the pre-release, and 4 mana to pump is not a lot of mana, and 8 mana is also a like thing that can happen in a game of Magic. And if you ever double pumping here, it's pretty insane. So this card's pretty important. Pretty good payoff for all of your tokens in play. Definitely a lot of like payoff plus enabler stuff happening in this set. We got to have the payoffs and the enablers, and this is one of the payoffs. Also, rapid response, pretty obvious payoff here on the job. 4 mana for a instant pump the team, and then scry, go wide, make tokens, pump them up. It's pretty simple, right? Hazard Herbalist, same idea. 3 mana for a 1/4. This can pump your tokens, give them death touch, go to push through. Not really a go wide card, but kind of cool. Also plays well with the Valiant effects in white as well. Next up on the enemy card side of things is the Bats in black-white. Starseer Mentor, 5 mana for a 3/5. Flying Vigilance. Beginning of your end step, you gained or lost life this turn. Target opponent loses 3 life, or sacks a permanent, or discards a card. And the black-white theme is about gaining life, but also somewhat awkwardly about you losing life, which is kind of hard to do, actually. There are some ways to lose life, but it's not as simple as a pain land like it is in Standard. But gaining life is the primary one here. And this card's just great, right? 3/5 Flying Vigilance for 5 is just awesome anyway. And the ability is just gravy. So really, really good card. We see Moonrise Cleric here. 3 mana for a 2/3 flyer. Attack, gain a life. Awesome. Just great. Just good rate. Pseudo lifelink. And then triggers all of your cards. Phenomenal common here. Life Create Duo. 1/2 Soul Warden. Gain some life. This one's a little more synergy based where the rate isn't as good. But gaining life over and over again is pretty powerful. And a little more tight on this card for sure. This is a bit of a tight theme, honestly. Obviously, just like flyers and life gains pretty good too, but like you can go pretty deep, I think. Waxwing Witness is awesome. 4 mana for a 2/4 Flying Vigilance. Or if you gain or lose life during your turn, +1/+0. So all those life gain effects. Now it's a 3/3. Now it's a 4/4. That's awesome. Really awesome card. Having the pre-release, they were great. Sonar Strike is another awesome card here, where usually this sort of like 2 mana deal 4 attacker blocker is like filler level. This thing being able to hit tapped creatures, so you can do it after the fact, is great. And then gaining 3 life is insane also. So this card's actually excellent. Probably the best version of this card we've ever seen. Well, it's playable in other decks too, but particularly good in Bats where life gain matters, which is awesome. And then you got Glide Dive Duo, 5 mana for a 3/3 ETB, drain 2. Again, awesome flyer, gains life, triggers things. Just a good solid card. There's a payoffs too for life gain. Moonstone Harbinger is a uncommon 3 mana 1/3 death touch flyer. Or if you gain or lose life during your turn, pump a squad, busso, and give them all death touch. That's also huge, right? So they push through all of your stuff. It's only your bats though, so again, a little more tight here. There's definitely you can go as tight as you want in this theme. I think this is not a theme like Lizards where you have to be tight. You can have all bats in life gain, but if you have half bats in life gain and just the rest is just kill spells and flyers, that's fine too. It's all about spells. I know, spells, otters. We get it. We understand what the joke is. This is Stormcatch Mentor, 2 mana for a 1/1 haste prowess and makes all your instant source spells cheaper. I honestly don't love the sizing on this card. It's not constructed, so it's hard to get like multiple prowess triggers in a turn. So I think this card's a little weaker than it looks, but still a pretty good payoff and enabler. Kind of weird also because like, the theme here is sort of otters, but like you want a lot instant sorceries too, which is kind of weird. So this theme feels like it should be a little tighter, but it's kind of harder to do, so we'll see. We also got Tempest Angler here, same idea, right? We have Hybrid 2/2 for 3, cast a non-creature spell, put a counter on it. So this is a, what's that card called? Something elemental, whatever. So this thing says play as many non-creature spells as you can, which means you play less otters, obviously, and so on and so forth. But the theme here is very clear. Play a lot of spells. Daring Wave Rider, same thing, right? 4/4/4/6, ETB, Snapcaster, a instant sorcery mana value 4 or less. Obviously, you have a lot of spells to make this card good, but if you flashback kill spell with this, it's awesome. It's really, really good. Also ways to bounce it too, which is kind of nice. So, gotta play out like a spells matter, kind of more controlling deck, I think. Pearl of Wisdom, there aren't like a ton of otters, and casting this for 3 is pretty bad. For 2 is pretty good, so I think it's kind of, you're gonna need spells in your spells deck. This fits the bill for sure. A Gate Assault, again, awesome rule spell. 3 mana for a 4 damage spell is great. This deck wants spells. This removes things. You're going to need to kill things to buy time and stay alive. This card does that. Harstorm Storms, great payoff. 1/4 for 3. Good defensive card. Cast a non-creature otter spell. Start drawing cards, which is great. Again, play spells, draw cards, do things, profit. Killspark Duo is the last one here, and this is kind of a weird card. It's a 1/3 for 3. Tap to deal 1. Non-creature untaps. These cards are a little weird because the body's like not super relevant. It's like pretty hard to block with this card and actually be happy about your blocks. But can be a payoff in this archetype for sure. Can turn on some of your lizard damage spells as well, but a little looser there. But if your deck is like, 7 creatures, all spells, and a lot of cantrips, this card can do some work. Squirrels are next. Golgari, and all about foraging, making food and filling the graveyard. More on forage in a little bit. This is just a really, really good card on rate. We have a Golgari 2-drop, 3/2, ETB dies, makes it food. That's just a good card. Just no cap or whatever kids are saying these days. Just good. And what's that food for? It's for foraging. Foraging is an ability where it's a cost, where you must exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sack a food to get a bonus. And Corpseberry Cultivator is kind of a weird one where it doesn't actually do anything for the forage. It just allows you to pay the cost if you want to. And then if you forage, it gets bigger. The goal here is that you want to be foraging other effects and then piggybacking this onto it. This card also plays well in multiples, where if you have 2 in play and you forage once, they both get bigger, which is great. Note that there is a bit of diminishing returns on forage, kind of like Delve, and mechanics like that, where you only have so many cards in your graveyard, so many food tokens, so you need to be aware of that. But I think this card's really, really good if you're deep into the archetype, but you want to be foraging a lot for this card. Bonecash Overseer, same idea. Whenever you forage, pay 1 life, tap, draw a card. That's awesome, as long as you're foraging a lot. If not, this card's heinous. So if you're in deep, which seems like this archetype wants to go, this card is great. Thieves Cycle, which is a great kill spell. This is just Hero's Downfall upside. So might not get this card super reliable, but it's obviously a great card. Bushy Bodyguard, huge forage payoff. 2 mana for a 2/1, has Offspring 2. Whenever this enters, you may forage. If you do, put 2 counters on it. The Offspring can also do that as well. So you can forage twice here. You get 4 mana for a 4/3 and a 3/3, which is insanely good. So fill that graveyard, make those foods, get the forage going. Cash Grab, there's your enabler. There's a way to do it, right? 2 mana for an instant. Mill 4, put a permanent card in your hand. If you milled over a squirrel, return a squirrel, make a food. So this can make for 2 possible forages down the line. Awesome enable for the deck. Heaped Harvest, same idea. 2 mana for an artifact food, ETB Rampant Growth. Whenever you sacrifice a Rampant Growth, so you can play this thing and get a land, and then forage it away and get another land and an effect there. This also might push these decks into more colors as far as splashing goes. I think there's mostly a 2-color format, but there's some splashy stuff in green, which is kind of cool. That's the Squirrel deck. Boros is all aggro, kind of heroic style. This is the Valiant ability. Whenever you target a thing with Valiant, an ability goes off, but only once a turn. And note that it's spell or ability, really, really important. Much easier to trigger than Heroic is. So, the mana for a 3-2, Vigilance Haste. Valiant, get a counter on it, which is great. Obviously, it's a great beater. Just a good card, put a counter 2 on it. We also got the Veteran Guard Mouse, 4 mana for a 3-4. Valiant, gets ++0 first strike, and then Scries, so another good payoff for targeting things. This is a tight deck for sure. You got to have targeters, and you got to have payoffs, and you got to have them in the right mix. And if you do, it's going to be a crazy aggro machine. One of the enablers here is Bravekin Duo. 1 mana for a 1-1. Pay 1, tap this. Give your creature ++1. Only as a sorcery. It's not a combat trick, but this is just Valiant every turn, which is pretty insane. Also can push through your smaller creatures. This is on players, same idea. 3-3, attack, untap, target permanent, so it gets a little bit of pseudo vigilance and the Valiant trigger. Mouse Trapper is a payoff here. 2 mana for a 3-2 flash. Valiant tap something, which is awesome. Brahma Guard Captain, another enabler. 4 mana for a 2-3 and target a thing, give a plus. So we can see here, always targeting effects are really, really important, but make sure you have the proper mix of things to target for bonuses and then things to target them. So Might of the Meek cantrip. He pumps a thing, triggers a Valiant, draws a card. This card will also be fine in the Otter deck. It's a cheap cantrip, but a pretty cool card. And then our last archetype is the old Froggies. And this is perhaps the weirdest one. Froggies are all about bouncing your own stuff or blinking it for value. So that, of course, is a lot of fun. Creates a lot of card advantage, but could also just get you run over because, like, you're just dilly-dallying around, your opponent kills you. But there are a lot of good frog cards. So you got 4-4 here. The Lily Splash Mentor has reach, and a lot of the frogs have reach. You can pay 3 and blink your own thing, put a counter on it, but only as a sorcery. This is not a combat trick, but this is a way to reset your things over and over again. And there's a ton of good ETBs among the frogs, like perhaps one of the best commons in a set, Pawn Prophet. This is a linchpin common if you've ever seen one, all right? Basically, every frog card wants to work with this card, all right? 2 mana hybrid Simic card, 1/1 ETB draw card. So it's just basically Elvish Visionary. That wouldn't be that good by itself. But in the context of this archetype, where everything is just bounce, flicker, bounce, flicker, bounce, flicker, it's awesome. Longer Lurker is great. Gives all your frogs ward, and they can target a creature, make it unblockable, and then when it hits, you blink it. So, turn 2 Pawn Prophet, draw a card. Turn 3 Lurker, Prophet unblockable, attack for 1, blink it, draw a card. Easy as that, right? Sticky Tongue Sentinel, same idea. ETB bounce thing if you want to, don't have to. Splash Slasher, ETB stun things with Offspring, and you can bounce it again, do it again, which is pretty awesome. This is a great card also, right? It's a really powerful effect. And then we got Splash Portal, 1 blue sorcery flicker. If it was one of the blue creature types, draw a card. Another great way to draw cards and do things, but more of a, an archetype kind of card than anything else. And then we have Runaway Together, a reprint here. Same idea. 2 mana, bounce their thing and your thing. If you just make it simple as, chump block with Pawn Prophet, bounce their big creature, bounce your Prophet, that's pretty good too. So this is the kind of card where it's not very good if you don't care about bouncing your own things. And if you do care about bouncing your own things, it's going to be great. And this is going to be hard to put together. A lot of important commons, uncommons, and rares, but looks really, really fun. I'm very, very excited about it. So that is the archetypes. As I said, I'll be dropping tomorrow night to start off a series. Bronze 4, load of a set. I'm freaking pumped. Set looks awesome. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe here on the channel. Look for episode 1 on YouTube on Wednesday. And then we're back to our regular schedule Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I know MHC was a little awkward with all the extra episodes, but they release a set every 6 months. 6 weeks. So what are we going to do? So here we are. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the queues. Let's go.